If it lives in your head, let's get it outside of your head. Your people can't see what's inside your head. As try as we might, we would love to be able to read minds, but we can't. So if it's inside your head, then it can't come out. People start with the tactics, but they don't know the 3 to 5 year goals, and they don't know the vision, and they don't really know why they're here, because we all have our individual priorities, because we're all chasing multiple things, because there's not clarity.
My God, the number of agencies that are probably running off of ChatGPT right now, because that's where they get their information for any decision or thought process or whatever else, is honestly kind of scary.
I started out as a producer in the insurance industry. I started selling small commercial, and then I started selling all lines. So personal lines, commercial, benefits. I was a generalist. And so I say that my knowledge was like really wide, but super shallow. Like I had no depth of knowledge.
Your mission can always be what it is, but your vision probably needs to be looked at. Just if nothing else, not saying you have to change it, but maybe you need to clarify it more, or add a little bit or take away a little bit depending on where you're at navigating the road.
If the leadership, if the people down below the top of the pyramid, I do believe if they don't have clarity, if they don't know the mission, if they don't know the vision, if they don't know the values, if they don't know the strategic objectives, what are we here for? What are we doing? Where are we going? It's such an emotional experience for people to go through a merger or an acquisition.
The most successful you can possibly be, you ultimately have to own the agency. And I don't know that I agree with that. Not everybody should own an agency. I probably should not own an agency, if I'm being completely honest. Can I go out and make it rain? Absolutely, positively. I could run the agency if I didn't have to do both.
When we invite multiple perspectives in, then we can get a more robust organizational clarity. We can get a more robust mission. We can get a more robust vision.
In the event that it's a nonprofit, I have the ability to take some of the money that I make and redistribute that to the people who need it to drive an impact for something that's important to me. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game. And today I am happy to welcome back one of our people who helps make Producers in Paradise possible for all of the members of the Killing Commercial community, Ms. Ashley Napier with Solomon, who actually, when I first met her, was the COO of an insurance agency. So she knows our industry very well, but she's pivoted into her career, and she's actually helping agencies with leadership issues, organizational clarity issues. And I can tell you that she has worked with several agencies inside the family, and we've gotten nothing but positive feedback about what she has been able to do for them. So I wanted to make sure we got her on the podcast as quickly as possible after Key West to make sure we share with you what she's doing, because guess what? You may need her and you may not know it yet. So Ashley, welcome back. We set the table, no pressure. Now you got to wow everybody, but here we are.
I brought my tap shoes, but nobody can see them.
There you go.
Get on the dust.
So quickly, for the people who haven't maybe heard you on the podcast before, why don't you just give like a quick, I did a quick overview, but maybe give them a little bit more flavor around your background, and let's dive in, because I'm interested to pick your brain a little bit and see what you're seeing out there on the streets. We live in our own silos to some degree, even though we're in a digital world and feel like we're with everybody all the time. That's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, thank you. So my career began in healthcare, and I was in the healthcare industry for about 9 years before I switched over to the insurance industry. I started out as a producer in the insurance industry. I started selling small commercial, and then I started selling all lines. So personal lines, commercial, benefits. I was a generalist. And so I say that my knowledge was like really wide, but super shallow. Like I had no depth of knowledge. I was in production for quite a few years, and then I promoted to a leadership position within an insurance agency, and discovered leadership. Like leadership is so different. I didn't anticipate that it would be what it was, right? Like I had been in a leadership position in the healthcare industry, and then I promoted into a leadership position in the insurance industry, and I forgot that leadership is about people. It's about organizational clarity. I forgot that it was, I thought that it was just doing a good job. I thought it was a skill set. And then I learned that it's also like self-awareness and other awareness. And then it's also like rowing in the same direction, high performance teams. Well, anyway, so I was a chief operating officer of an insurance company, and then I started an agency with some other folks, and we had an independent agency, but we also had a captive management company. So think like self-insurance, not State Farm Farmers. I'm talking like self-insurance type of
Sure.
captive. Did that for a while before I started doing advising. So now I'm doing advisory and I am doing leadership consulting, coaching within the insurance industry. And what I'm seeing these days is the same thing that I had happen to me is I move into a leadership position. I am asked to lead a company and I don't really have the skill sets to do so. And so I'm looking and I'm seeing that people are lacking organizational clarity, but also like self-awareness. How do I impact others and other awareness? Like what do they need for me to be healthy, engaged, and a high-performing team?
Yeah, I think, the other thing too is leadership disguises itself. I think that so many times when we look at where leadership is in an organization, we automatically focus to the top. And I think that that's a misconception a lot of people have, because leadership's buried in every level of an organization. Now, if you have a good leader who's leading other leaders, then they should be able to recognize those people and bring them up to what their potential is inside the organization, and give them that opportunity to fulfill what their calling is, whether they realize it or not. But I think that agencies specifically, we get so caught up in the grind every single day that we overlook a lot of that stuff. And then you've got somebody that's sitting at the top of the food chain who may or may not be running everything as efficiently as they want to, or they're starting to get burnt out or whatever else, when the answer to how you solve that problem is literally sitting in the staff in front of them. They just don't have mechanisms in place, or they're allowing themselves to run too hard to identify those people and have a strategy around bringing them up to make, honestly, their life easier and the agency better and stronger.
Yeah, I love that point. So leaders define culture or they help set culture, and sub leaders define subculture. And I do believe that if the leadership, if the people down below the top of the pyramid, I do believe if they don't have clarity, if they don't know the mission, if they don't know the vision, if they don't know the values, if they don't know the strategic objectives, what are we here for? What are we doing? Where are we going? Then it can create an unintentional culture. And that unintentional culture can create headaches that you really didn't anticipate.
Hmm. Yeah, so let me ask you this. You're working with agencies, but you also have the ability, you could work with some of our wholesale partners who are maybe in a period of transition right now. You have the ability to go and work with carriers, maybe not necessarily at the national scale, but and maybe you can. I don't know. I'll let you speak for yourself, but at least regional offices and everything. Because honestly, I don't really feel like, and I don't. All right, carrier people, don't get offended at this. I don't feel like a lot of stuff gets. I feel like a lot of stuff comes down from national, but I don't feel like stuff happens at national, if that makes sense. It happens at the regional level more than anything else because you have more control. And I mean, if you've when you work with carriers, you see that because they have different specialties in different areas. And it's almost like, well, no, our guy out of the Atlanta division is the one who handles this. Well, the Atlanta division and the Tampa division may have two completely different cultures, even though they're in the
Mm.
same national organization. So that's why I make the comment that I do. But as you're going out, you're seeing trends right now, I would suspect, in the engagements that you have. What are two or three things that you see that the people you're working with are struggling with, that have them come in and say, you know what, we need to get somebody from the outside to get a second set of eyes on this, or a set of eyes. In many cases, they may not even be looking at it themselves.
I
What's
was gonna
that
say,
look like?
I feel like most people are probably like not self-aware that something is happening. That's probably the biggest thing holding people back.
Mm.
That's fair.
Yeah, man, I wish that there was like one answer, but I feel like it's just as custom as insurance. It's like when you've seen an insurance policy, you've seen one insurance policy. Well, like they're kind of different, right? They're nuanced. But what I think I'm seeing is what I'm hearing is a frustration with people, a frustration of growth, a frustration of expenses going up, a frustration of turnover. I'm hearing frustration with people, and I'm hearing frustration with revenue or money. Let's just say money because it could be expenses or it could be profit. And what I think I believe right now, and this is multifaceted, so I'm just going to focus on one area. But what I think I believe is that there isn't a whole lot of clarity. And so let me, if you will, just let me go through like what I think clarity is. I think
Or
clarity is mission. It is what are we here to achieve? Who are we serving? What are we here to do? Vision is that long-term vision for the future. And it is so hard to grasp, but we are running after it. Our values. It is the filters that we're using. It's the things that we stand for. Do we know what those are? And then do we know what our strengths are? Do we know what our weaknesses are? Do we know what our opportunities and our threats are? I mean, it's a classic SWOT analysis. And then from that, we get our pillars, which are our areas of concentration. Do we know where we're focused? And then what are our 3 or 5 year goals? What are our objectives? What do we need to achieve in the next 3 to 5 years in order to chase that vision? And then from that, we get the 1 year goals. And then what this year do we need to do in order to achieve those 3 to 5 year goals? And then our tactics. What are the daily inputs? What are the KPIs? What are the things that people need to be doing in order to get to the 1 year goals, to get to the 3 year goals? And what I think I see happen is people start with the tactics, but they don't know the 3 to 5 year goals and they don't know the vision and they don't really know why they're here because we all have our individual priorities because we're all chasing multiple things because there's not clarity.
mm, I think too, it's I almost feel like, and I'm going to tell you this from my own perspective, it's easy to have the big picture, long range vision. It's much more difficult to reverse engineer that into the actionable steps and milestones you need to achieve along the way to get there. And it's really tough. I mean, I'm the type of person, it's just like I'm going to there's probably no real correlation here, but I'm going to give you an example. When we made the decision to bring in a CRM, I knew what the CRM could do for us. I knew which one we wanted, and I ultimately knew where we would be. But I had to bring somebody in to say, David, here's how these are the steps along the way to get there because I had never really implemented a CRM before. I've used them, but I had never said, okay, let me go buy this bare chassis and figure out how to build the body and the engine and all the component parts around it to make this thing turn new business for us. And, you know, that's not something that's necessarily inexpensive, but it's a necessary evil if you don't know what you're doing. It's far more expensive in the long run if you try and do that stuff yourself than what it is if
You'd
you
spend so
just go
much
hire
time.
the pro, right?
Mhm.
Hire the pro, let them do it. I don't think leadership is really any different than that. And the reason why I say that is because I think there's this weird thing in our industry that if you're a successful producer in an agency, and I'm going to carve out like the Gallaghers and the Marshes and the Aons and the Willis, because that's not really who our audience is. And I do feel like they operate differently. But if you look at the people who listen to this podcast and the agencies that listen to this podcast, I feel like there's this weird thing where in order for you to be is most successful, the most successful you can possibly be, you ultimately have to own the agency. And I don't know that I agree with that. Not everybody should own an agency. I probably should not own an agency, if I'm being completely honest. Can I go out and make it rain? Absolutely, positively. I could run the agency if I didn't have to do both, but I'm one of those people that honestly, I was like, you know what? For me to be viewed as successful in the industry, I just need to go launch this thing, own it, and whatever else. Whereas if I would have just stayed on my career path where I was, I'd probably still have the same work-life balance. I wouldn't have nearly the stress and the headaches that you have running an agency, and my financial position may even be better, you know, than what it is as an agency owner because I don't really have any overhead that I'm paying for, and I can not that producers leave on Friday and leave their work at the office, but I can assure you they do far more so than what an agency principal does. And so I think that our industry probably, I don't want to say, I'm trying to think of the right word. I just think there's a perception there that should not exist. So, I mean, I guess if you're a producer that's out there listening to this right now, and you think that for anybody in the industry, for people to view you as successful, you ultimately have to go do your own thing, you need to probably expunge that thought process, especially if you're happy where you are right now.
I think it's true for like not just this industry, but like most. I mean, if I hear like almost every conversation my wife has at home with people on her team at ADP, and she has people on her team that make way more than she does, that have no business being in a leadership role and don't want to either. So I mean, I think that kind of holds true for a lot of other industries. Some people just don't. They want to go out, put their head down, and they're not. Maybe they don't have that leadership bone, because I do think that there are people who have it and people who don't. Not to say that you can't develop it, but I think that some people just don't have a chance of developing it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think that I actually walked through this whole process that I just did with you with an individual. Hey, let's get clear on your mission, your vision, your values. Like you can apply this individually. And what you can learn from that is what exactly do you need to do when your feet hit the floor? So you're a sniper rifle, not a shotgun. We should be encouraging an entrepreneurial spirit in our, especially in our producers. If we can encourage an entrepreneurial spirit in them, then maybe they might not leave. Maybe they may like write more business than we could potentially fathom. If we've got the right people in the right seats rowing in the right direction, because we're real clear about it, like think of the impact. You couldn't pull a producer away from that. I do have a few people, and one I'm coaching right now that's got a significant book, larger than a lot of agencies. And you couldn't pull this person away from their agency because they allowed this person to have this entrepreneurial spirit. And that's what we should be fighting for. And we want buy-in, we want engagement. We want them to say like my position here matters and it makes a difference and I am one part of the whole and I am chasing after the whole because I know exactly where we're going and I believe in it.
Okay, so that was my follow-up question, is creating that entrepreneurial spirit and mindset is just, mainly focused on having everybody realize what that vision and goal is. Otherwise, there's not really anything to chase after. There's no entrepreneurial mindset if that part doesn't exist. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I say that I would agree with that. And I would also say that they need to have the responsibility and the authority to do so.
I think that also means that there are times in the life cycle of any firm where that needs to be reviewed and readdressed, right? I mean, just because your mission statement and vision statement is one thing when you
Mm.
launch doesn't mean that, 10 years down the road that it hasn't changed, right? Because I do feel like I'll use myself as an example, launching an agency from scratch. My mission and vision was literally, I need to feed my family. That's my mission and my vision both, because I was a one person operation in the dining room of my home. I didn't really have anybody else to cast that vision to. And I needed to, right? I probably needed to be thinking of those things. But when you're starting out as a scratch agent, you're scratching and clawing for everything you can. And even though that's important, it's not as important as groceries, So
Yeah.
you tend to leave that stuff by the wayside. And then I think that when you get into a situation where you start to build your organization and you bring other people in, maybe that also still falls by the wayside because you never made it a priority to begin with. And so now it's about making sure those people are assimilated. But what are you really assimilating them to? There's not really a culture. There's not really a clear vision. There's no real steps to get there. And I think that as time progresses, even if you have that, your mission may not change more than what I'd be interested in your thoughts. I feel like mission is probably more static than vision is. I think if your mission is like, I'll give you an example. I sit on the board of a nonprofit, right? Quest Inc. And our mission statement is we provide people with developmental disabilities an ability to live a fruitful life. That's never going to change.
Right.
right? That's a very broad mission statement, but the vision of how you're going to get there, I believe that probably changes depending on where you're at financially, where you're at geographically, and everything else. And I don't know that agencies would be any different than that. I think that your mission can always be what it is, but your vision probably needs to be looked at. Just if nothing else, not saying you have to change it, but maybe you need to clarify it more or add a little bit or take away a little bit depending on where you're at navigating the road.
Yeah.
And you can
I
tell me I'm
think it,
completely wrong and I'm not going to be offended, but I mean,
I
that's just my perception.
I agree with that. I think it's same thing for the values portion of that too. Like your values probably aren't really going to change that much, but the vision on, the bigger picture of things and where you want to go, that part may change.
yeah, I think it depends. I think for the most part, your mission and your values, like they don't really change. They could be updated, they could be tweaked, like definitions could change and little nuances can be readjusted. I think that if you're tweaking your vision, then maybe you didn't think big enough in the beginning. Now, I have seen this happen, like where we outgrow our vision. And yeah, I do think that if we have outgrown our vision, we should adjust it. But I think when we're going out to set it, it should be so big, like change the world, right? Like change how insurance is perceived, change how insurance is experienced. Like that is something we can always chase after. So if it is big in the beginning and we're always chasing after it, then and we're still chasing after it, then I'm not sure that I would argue that it would need a tweak. But if it's like feed my kids and now my kids are fed and they've got the clothes that they want and we've got them in the schools that we want, like that was a really big vision at one time. But if we have satisfied that vision, let's set it bigger. And next time, like let's make it so audacious, so big that we feel so motivated to run towards it, but it's always just a little bit out of reach. But it's not, we don't believe it's unobtainable.
So, do you think that it's possible for that mission or vision to be um, too big? Because
You
nobody's
know,
ever going to accuse me of thinking small. Like I can tell you that beyond a shadow of a doubt.
I think that there are some people, there are some folks that think that's too big, we'll never achieve that. But I think that that same vision statement, like change how the world perceives insurance. Some people are going to say too big, can't do that. And I would say some people would say we're going to chase after that. That's not big enough.
Yeah, I think also too, if somebody says, "Well, change how the world perceives insurance or purchases insurance or whatever else," okay, maybe that is too big. Maybe you're never going to write insurance outside the state of Florida. So then you say, change how Floridians perceive, and now it's something that's more in line with where you're at. So that's why I say that. I do think that sometimes if you think too big, that people are going to automatically disqualify it right out of the box. They're like, this guy's nuts. There's no way we're ever going to get there, even though the most entrepreneurial people are always going to believe that they can achieve whatever it is and they're going to figure out a way to get it done. It's not that doesn't necessarily translate to the other people in your organization.
Well, there's about 28% of the population that lives in the future, and they can see that. They intuitively know that if we can achieve that, they may not know the details to get there, they may not know the path, but they can, if you put something out there that's so audacious that it seems unfathomable, less than half are going to buy into it. So we do need to be mindful of the people that are around us. So 70, what would that be? 73% of the population is going to say, nah, that's too big. I don't really know about that. But when we have healthy leaders that value, listen, appreciate, hear their people, then they are able to get buy-in and say, yeah, we can. And it's okay. We're going to plot this out. We're going to map it out. Like we're in this together. We're going to figure it out. And I want to hear what you have to say, but help me get there.
So
Let's
is that
all
the
let's all
first
build this arc together.
like when you engage with somebody, is that where you start? You start at the very top with the vision and all the stuff that we've just been talking about, or what does that interaction look like?
When I engage with somebody, I usually just say like, what's going on? What's troubling you? What's getting in your way of hitting your goals? What are your goals? We usually just start there. And sometimes I find that it is an individual contributor thing that we need to work on, and sometimes it's somewhere in the middle, and sometimes it's at the strategic clarity, organizational clarity level. So it really just depends. Usually what I start is like, what's getting in your way of achieving what you want to achieve? What's frustrating you right now? What problems are you trying to solve? What are you seeing in your company that is hindering you? Or like my favorite one is you're doing so well, but you want to do amazing things. You want to change the culture, you want to change the world. Like, and you're not sure how to get there, let's figure that out. Like, so one's from a fixing mindset and one is from like a chasing towards growth mindset.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, I mean, in the agency world too, you're automatically gonna have, and division is a harsh word and usually comes with negative connotations. So I want to be sure that everybody understands I'm using it in its rawest form. This is not like in terms of divisive, but just sort of a line of demarcation, if so, if you will. Your people that are going to be producers are automatically going to view things differently than majority of the people on the service side, and vice versa. So as the leader, you have to figure out, how do I bring these two people together to see the vision commonly? I would also argue that not every producer is entrepreneurial. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurial means you're going to be willing to take a lot of risk, and not every producer is willing to take a lot of risk. They may just be really good at sales and lining out total cost of risk and all of the other things that, an agent should do at the point of sale. So, how, again, I think this all goes back to clarity, right? If you're sitting at the top of the organizational chart, you are the one who has to figure out how to make that messaging clear to the point that it is going to be received by both sides of the operation equally. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think it's tough.
It is tough. And usually what I find is that the leader doesn't do this alone. Like they may build a task force to get multiple voice inputs. They may, and depending on how large their leadership is, they may enlist the help of their leadership staff. They may invite outside consultants in to give perspective on messaging or uh, like how to actually put this together. But yeah, there has to be what I find is when we invite multiple perspectives in, then we can get a more robust organizational clarity. We can get a more robust mission. We can get a more robust vision. We can get values that people that are not necessarily just aspirational or dull and mundane. Like we can get a good blend of things that people can buy into, that they can hear, that they can resonate with, that they want to be part of this organization, but it's usually through multiple voices, multiple people having input.
Yeah, I agree. Kyle, you've been through a lot of organizational change. I wouldn't say a lot, but I mean, relative to your age, you went through issues with your prior employer, which is why you're here
Ye-
now, just in
Yeah.
terms of what that all looked like. And I think something else that's very, very real in our industry right now is kind of how the acquisition marketplace is, whether it be true venture capital or a straight acquisition where an agency's being acquired and then that has to be assimilated into a new organization, or even the culture changes when you do one of those deals where you're essentially running the agency the same way you always have, but you're doing it for somebody else now because you got a cash payout and you have some level of ownership in the surviving entity that your goal is to try and grow and you're incented to through an earnout. And I think there's a lot of nuances to that kind of stuff that affects things too, especially when you take like an agency principal who maybe's back living off of referrals and doing okay and still writing a good amount of new business that way every single year. And now all of a sudden you have an earnout and they're under pressure that they haven't felt that they were under in the past and they're answering to somebody else for their own production. I can see that being a pressure cooker inside of an agency that was maybe a little bit more relaxed. But Kyle was part of a firm prior to coming to Florida Risk that was acquired by venture capital. And I mean, I think I would be interested in his thoughts because I think he's probably
Yeah.
got some good insight into this.
Yeah. So I went from something that was very, previously with the office supplies where there was like no organizational changes. It was, very steady. That's just not how that's just not how that business worked. To going into something, and then I had three different managers. I was only there for like a year and a half. I think, yeah, I think
I must
that's
have met you on like your third day or something then.
dude.
I think
Yeah, I know. It really was probably not like super far off. Like probably first month
one
ish.
of the greatest lunch meetings I've ever had in my life, by the way. I mean, I'll never forget that. That was fantastic.
We had a couple of good lunch meetings early on, but so I went from that into this, situation that was sort of volatile at this PEO, and it was like I had the one manager, and then they were gone, or and then they brought in somebody else, and that person was there for. I was starting to, because this happened like early on. I had this one manager for like 3, 4 months, and then they left the company. And then, a new guy comes in who's got previous experience and knows a lot of people inside the organization already because they all came over from ADP previously. And so, like, already I sort of feel a little bit on the outside with all of that, but I'm starting to kind of get in a rhythm of like, okay, this is because they totally changed how they wanted us to sell. They're like, all right, this is how you guys are doing it now. We're gonna come in, and this is like, you know, still relatively close to the same value prop, but like this is how we're going to go through the sales process. I'm like, okay. So it took a little while to get that. It was a complex sale. There was not like, it was a long runway from start to finish. There's only a select amount of people that are going to kind of fit that. So then I'm starting to get the flow, and then that guy, that's when the merger happened. So it was like he was still sort of the manager of our team for like a few weeks. It was just super unclear. The other guy comes in, and we kind of find out like through whispers that the company that we merged with, they're basically taking over all the C-suite positions, as well as the like the team management stuff. And so we went from a team of like whatever, 5 or 6 of us in the Tampa area to having, another 6 or 7 added from another region. And we were all kind of going to be competing in the same pool. And it was just like, there was nobody really knew what was going on. Like we all kind of had questions. We're looking around. We're like, people are like not here anymore that were here last week. Like what's going on? And so I was the newest guy, so they ended up getting rid of me, and then David and I connected again after that. But yeah, I mean it's kind of like what we were just talking about. I mean it's when people don't have that sense of like where this is headed, and things are very unsure, obviously that's going to create a problem. That's going to create a problem with performance, buy-in, all of it.
Yeah. That made this is not about mergers or acquisitions, but it made me think back in 2016, I started to like build my network and I was meeting with people, and on repeat, I heard similar stories to yours, Kyle, of I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's happening. People didn't like their jobs. They didn't like who they worked for. They didn't like who they worked with. They didn't, I mean, there was just like so much frustration. I got really curious at why. And I thought it was just one thing. Then I learned it's a multitude of things. But I see that happen. Like, so if I jump back to mergers and acquisitions, I see this happen in mergers and acquisitions frequently. I think it makes me think of one of my mentors tells me that if somebody says you're going to merge, like we're just going to merge cultures, usually the stronger culture wins out. Like usually there's a dominant culture that happens, and then there's not a whole lot of remnants left of the one that didn't win out. Like usually there's one. And so the hard part for people within organizations when we have a merger or an acquisition, like they may not have signed up for that. They may not have signed up for this mission, this vision, this value. They may not have signed up for the leadership type that they're working under. They may not have
Mm.
signed up for the position that they got shoved into or enlisted into or assigned to. So that is a really, really hard thing. Like for people to go through that, it's such an emotional experience for people to go
Yeah.
through a merger or an acquisition.
No, that's a
Well,
good point. I mean, because all three of those people were completely different. Like I had three totally different relationships. And like the last one was like zero relationship. It was just like, you know, every conversation was very just like not really knowing which direction it was gonna like I never had a conversation. It was like, yeah, I think that went well. Like, but then it's just something you don't think about. And like you said, maybe something you didn't sign up for. And so it makes it tough.
Well, I especially think too, when you look at the average agency, right? I mean, I'm not talking about super regionals. I'm talking about the people that we run with for the most part. Granted, we have friends that have larger agencies than others, but it's very much familial too. It's much more like a family than it is a business in many cases, and that has its pluses and minuses. But I do think like if you go down that road where you're going to ultimately, cash in your chips and leave, and you're going to have the family left behind, it's going to be a really tough transition if you bring somebody in that's got like a very rigid corporate structure that all of a sudden these people are going to be required to adhere to because it's not what, to your point, they didn't sign up for it. They haven't lived it the entire time. It's just, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how this tracks over time because I feel like we're not seeing anything really slow down. I mean, we probably are if I were to look at valid statistics, but I feel like every week I hear of another person I know that has left their agency, they've sold their agency, or they've allowed themselves to be acquired and they're sticking around for the earnout period.
yeah. I think about like I would love to be a fly on the wall of some of these larger buying groups, the organizations that are buying, because like what are the people experiencing on the inside?
Well, and the thing is, I feel like when this stuff happens, that it becomes a it's not like you're going to set everybody down in the conference room and say, "Hey, by the way, I'm going through the final phases of selling the agency. What do you think? Here's what it's going to look like moving forward." Nobody's doing that. So it's not only that you're getting, I don't want to say bad news, but you're getting news you weren't expecting. It's a complete surprise. My goodness. I mean, there's probably a whole market for Solomon just working in assimilating culture between the acquiring and the acquired.
Yeah, yes. Yes. And what happens to, I mean, like what companies can do to mitigate this? And I would love to say that it like we can be risk-free. You can't. It's there's people. People are hard, they're complex. But what can be done ahead of time is to well, there's a few things, so I'll focus on one, is to start to establish a common leadership language. So if we go into it and we can establish a common leadership language that can be objective, not subjective, then it can help reduce the pressurization that happens during these periods of transition. And I sure wish that I could say it could fix all of it. It's not going to. But if we can figure out how to communicate better through these times of transition, then we are going to be ahead of the curve during the times of transition.
Agreed. Agreed. So, what would your advice be without giving away the Solomon secret sauce? What would your advice be for an agency who feels like this is probably something we need to think about? This is probably something we need to focus on. Where would you have them start? And when would be the right time for them to reach out to Ashley to say, okay, we've gotten the blocking and tackling done, but now we're at a point where we need to make sure that we're doing this stuff right. We need to bring the pro in. Because people, listen, let me talk to you agents real quick because I know how cheap you people are when it comes to getting off your wallet. If you don't bring professionals in to do things like this, please don't ever let me hear you bitch about people going and buying their insurance online. Please don't let me hear that because that's exactly what you're doing in your own business. We need to understand that when we talk about the need for outsourcing to a professional who's going to give you the best advice, that doesn't just apply to the people who buy from us, it applies to the people that we choose to buy from. And I think that that's a huge gap. A lot of times, and especially my God, the number of agencies that are probably running off of Chat GPT right now because that's where they get their information for any decision or thought process or whatever else is honestly kind of scary. But when would be the right time for them to engage? Is there any legwork that they should be doing before they reach out to somebody like you? Or is it better just to have you involved from the very, very beginning?
I see people try to do it on their own. And I think that you could do it. It's hard to participate if you're also trying to facilitate. So what I mean by that is if you are in the process of figuring out your mission, well, first I think you need to like back up and say, am I clear? Am I clear on all of the things? Am I clear? Mission, vision, values, SWOT, pillars, objectives, goals, tactics. Am I clear on those things? Do my people know that when they come into work, they know exactly what to do outside of just their daily responsibilities? I am thinking of that, but what are the other things that they need to be doing to get to those goals, to get to those objectives? Do they know? Are there any points of like friction or frustration or breakdown? If you're seeing any of that, that may be the time to do it. Um, but so what to do is like if you don't have clarity and if your people don't have clarity, then that is where that's some what you should be doing. Like let's get to some clarity. But when is I really like to work towards goals. Like I don't want to waste time. I
Who
sure don't
doesn't
want to
though,
waste
right?
time.
Like if you don't have goals and want to work towards them, like, do I really even want to hang out with you? Like you
Yeah.
have to have some kind of clarity. It doesn't even matter what it is, in any aspect of your life, you should have goals for everything. Otherwise, what's
Yes.
the point of living? I mean, hey, you know what my goal is? I want to go around and be mediocre for the entire existence on this planet. That's it. We'll just take it as it comes to us. Don't really have any clarity, vision, or whatever else. I don't know. I feel like half the island of Key West lives that way, but I also feel like
Yeah.
they've been successful in other aspects of their life, which is why they can afford to do that now. It's a different story. But seriously, I mean, I think that to your point, my challenge would be to anybody listening to this, what are your goals? Have you even defined those yet and shared them? Like, I would bet you a lot of people may visualize it, but I put out a post this week, and every once in a while, I'll put out what I consider to be a more sappy or inspirational post. But I do that because I think it's really important for people to step back and think about what do they really want to get out of their life? Just take business and throw it out the window for a second, because business is only a portion of our existence. What do we really want to do? And I gave the reflection. The last time I did this is when we were standing on that rooftop restaurant in Italy back in February in Rome. And this time I posted from Red Rocks. Both of those were bucket list things for me. And both of them went like way off the rails on LinkedIn, like huge reach on the post, right? But the whole thing was, got to put the pen to the paper, right? You have to make action. And it's like dreams don't die. I forget what I said. Something about I was on a roll, and I was literally sitting at the Eric Church concert typing this because I wanted to get it while all the thoughts were in my head. The overall arching theme was dreams die from inaction, right? It's not because of any other thing other than we don't act on them. And it's funny because the comment thread is where the gold is because I'm getting comments from all kinds of other people that are on there. And I'll never, like, one of the people on there was one lady said, I'm just, this is something I want to do, but I'm just not ready yet. And I looked at her job title and I said, with all due respect, you need to quit thinking like an underwriter and start living your life because you being conservative may mean you never get this opportunity. And there was another guy who said, this is on my list. I just haven't gotten into it yet. And I wrote back and said, why not? Why haven't you gotten to it yet? And I think that, we need to think about that too. What's ultimately going to fulfill our lives? This is just a mechanism that allows us to do what's really important, right? Anything that I do here, I look at it from the viewpoint of, yes, I can make money doing this, but I also can make sure other people's businesses thrive because we help them remain profitable, by insuring them and giving them risk management advice. Or, in the event that it's a nonprofit, I have the ability to take some of the money that I make and redistribute that to the people who need it to drive an impact for something that's important to me. And, I think we just get so lost in a lot of what life brings at us that we forget about what, like, just being grounded is like, what's really important. And that lives within the four walls of my house first. And anything else, emanates from there. Something that's really bothered me in the last, 24, 48 hours has been all the publicity that the guy from the Coldplay concert is getting right now, right? And what bothers me about it, obviously, it bothers me that this guy's cheating on his wife. That's really none of my business. I mean, he's got his own battles he has to fight. Certainly, we don't have an alignment in our core values because that's not something that I would ever do. And I make sure that that never happens because of how I engineer, how I interact with people and everything else. But what bothers me is I see a lot of people that think it's humorous to make memes that are driving people to, their business, or, hey, my agency does this, not this, and they're featuring all of that. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, you people are so completely tone deaf and selfish, because every time you post that, it's another cut to the lady who's gotten completely humiliated, that was married to this clown, and his kids, if he has any, that were this is their dad, and everybody's sensationalizing it, making it a meme. And the reality is, somebody's life is like really on the rocks right now because of all of this, and you don't see anybody posting about,
Because
hey, I
there's no
really,
consequences, man. That like
right.
that's the age of social media, and why I'm so glad I wasn't around when I was like younger.
Oh, dude.
I'm concerned, like, for, I mean, my kids are young enough now to, who knows what it'll look like when that time rolls around for them. But it's like, dude, that's just, I mean, you've got all your internet, trolls and people who, hide behind their computer screens saying whatever they want because there's no repercussions. I mean, that's a huge problem. It's
I think it is horribly sad my kids don't know what water from a garden hose tastes like.
Well, I can tell
Wait,
you that Jackson does, because this little freak, I filled up his little play thing the other day. It's like one of those little water deals that just sits, it's like a tower. You pour it and spins around, whatever. And he's just sitting there. He grabs like one of the cups and just starts like drinking out of it. The water, it's dirt, it's disgusting. Spider webs and stuff in it. I'm like, bro, stop. Like, you
Hey,
have a
forget
water right here. But yeah, I
well, I
grew up
think
drinking hose water too, and it was fantastic.
forget your Mio. Yeah, forget your Mio drops. Here's your hot rubber flavored water.
Yeah.
well, I think about a few things based off of what you said, David. And I think what's interesting to me is when I saw this breaking news, so this scandal, all I thought is, man, this sure looks like this is none of my business. And this could be easily a distraction. And I think that we find that a lot of in business is shiny things or entertaining things or things that we want to chase after come our way. And if we don't have any sort of clarity, we're going to chase after them. We're going to put our attention towards them. Like, I have goals to get. I don't have time to figure out any sort of scandal. Like, that's not what I should be doing, because I am focused on hitting my goals and achieving my objectives. So if I'm getting distracted, then that's probably another way of looking at, like, do I need help? Yeah, maybe. And then another one is like, if I just have a financial goal, I think that's great, but I actually think that like financial goals are measurements of the other things that you should be putting into. So if your big vision is to get to a certain revenue dollar, $15 million, then that's a target. But actually, like, let's set some different strategic objectives. Let's set some different things. So that is a marker of it. And then I think about, like, if it lives in your head, let's get it outside of your head. Your people can't see what's inside your head. As try as we might, we would love to be able to read minds, but we can't. So if it's inside your head, then it can't come out. But I think about, like, if things don't change, if people aren't changing, it's because they don't see any sort of dissatisfaction. They don't have a vision for the future and they don't know what to do next. When you have a vision for the future that compels you to move, when you have the natural next steps and you have some sort of dissatisfaction with how the things are right now, that's when you start moving into change. That's when we start seeing change. So those are some things, and I like your point about, well, I won't reiterate it. I won't reiterate it. I don't even want to bring it up about distractions.
100%. We've been going almost an hour. What do we want to leave them with besides how to get a hold of you?
I think if I could leave people with anything, it would be like, start fighting for your highest good and start fighting for the highest good of other people. The people that you lead, you make a big impact on. It has such a ripple effect. And when you are not intentional, you're accidental. You can't be one, or you can't be in between. You're intentional or you're accidental. And so what do you need to do as a leader of yourself, a leader of a person, a leader of a team, an organization, a community? What do you need to do in order to become more intentional with those that you lead? And put it to paper. Write it down. Do something with it. Make a plan. Run after it. Don't get distracted. That's what I think
100%.
I'd leave them with.
How do they
Cool.
get a hold of you? Because they're going to want more, especially with the freaking heat I just threw on LinkedIn while you were saying that.
They can get a hold of me by reaching out to me on LinkedIn. I am Ashley Napier, comma MAOL. You can go to theashleynapier.com or you can go to Solomon, our Solomon website. It's Solomon, SOLOMONSA.com.
So here's
Or
the
they can
deal.
find me on Facebook.
Here's why Solomon was not able to be tagged. Um, because it's Solomon Strategic Advisors, and I was stopping at Solomon, and the list was so long, but it didn't capture the second word. So before I posted, I went and looked at your profile to see how it was reflected in your employment area, and that's how I fixed it. So they're tagged too.
Amazing. Thank you for that. Yeah, you can find me anyway. Get a hold of me. I want to talk. I want to have conversations. And sometimes I find like I sat down with someone at in Producers in Paradise and we just went through it quickly and they decided to launch it themselves. Like, let's figure out what is keeping
For
you from
now,
reaching your goals.
yeah, for now they decided to launch it themselves. That's how that
True.
works.
True. I do think that it's easier to do it with somebody else. Like if we're living in our head, then we're not getting the maximum benefit of the impact of others.
I like
Absolutely.
it.
Anything
Thanks
else,
for
Kyle?
having
Before
me.
we, yeah, anything else before we wrap up?
I think we nailed it.
Cool. Well, listen, Ashley, thank you very much. Thank you for taking an hour out of your time to be with us this morning. I think this will be very fruitful for agencies out there to hear what agencies, wholesalers, carriers, whoever in our ecosystem, everybody can do better and learn. But also for pouring into our community specifically. I know a lot of people have met with you and talked with you at Producers in Paradise, and are always so very complimentary. And I know that people are in different stages of where they are in their growth cycle, but you need to know, and I hope that people from Solomon hear this as well, that it's been nothing but positive feedback. And I know that if you keep making those little investments into those people, that's going to bear a lot of fruit for you. So thank you for doing that. I really appreciate it. I know that it's early in your tenure there, and it's a commitment for you to get down there, and it's not unnoticed, and it's very much appreciated. And we're just thankful to have you.
I'm so glad to come. And you say online all the time, like you don't know until you experience it, and it's true. It's just true. And what I like, people ask me like, what happens? And all I can think is like, community happens. Like we can move mountains with community together, like going in the same direction. Are we not all going in the same direction, chasing big dreams? And the impact of that is profound. I mean, it is conversations and community and motivation and you really can't experience you don't know until you experience it, but it is the culture that you have intentionally created that allows this to happen. So thank you for creating that environment. Thank you for setting us up for success and creating the atmosphere that work can happen. I am happy to be a part of it, and it is quite a joy to be there.
Wait
And
till
also,
next
like, I
year.
drink way too much tequila. If I'm just being honest, far too much tequila.
Well, then you don't want to know that they make a 007 at the Tree Bar with tequila as opposed to vodka. So
I
with
did
the
have her
fresh
do that.
with the fresh squeezed orange juice, it's fantastic. She turned me on to that one time, and I don't know that I'll ever go back now.
Interesting.
So
Yeah, I get my whole yearly quota just there. Like I don't need to drink outside of Producers in Paradise, but I'm
there you
not
go.
saying that it's sloppy. I'm just saying we're
No,
having a
no,
good
no, no,
time.
no, not at all. Nobody, honestly, I don't feel like anybody was sloppy this year, which makes me rest much easier at night. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
again,
thanks for
thanks for,
having me.
yep, absolutely. Everybody else, we'll catch you next time. See ya.